What's going on, guys? Welcome to the live stream. Today we're talking about the PS5 and how fast is it really, and of course how it compares to the PC. I want to thank all you guys for stopping in and watching. I haven't done one of these videos in quite some time. I figured since I'd finished building multiple PCs, we'll dive right in and talk about all this stuff because there are people that requested a video like this. So how you guys doing? Thank you so much for stopping in. I appreciate it. What's up, Aaron? So, we talk about different things on this channel. Gaming, consoles, of course, the gaming PCs that I've built. We've talked about a lot of different things. And I just really want to touch base on the whole, PS5 and how fast is it really. Now, I'm not going to be getting into any of the debate about PS5 or Xbox Series X. I'm going to kind of leave that for this video, with the exception of the PS5 is faring better in sales. It's also faring better in game, I guess you could say, playability, because it seems like Valhalla plays better on PS5 than it does on PC or Xbox Series X. It also has a much faster hard drive and a very, very fast hard drive. In fact, faster than any PC could possibly have right now. It's the only one of its kind. So I'm going to leave that at the door. There's going to be no debate against PS5 versus the Series X. That debate is for another day in another video. What I want to talk about today is PS5. How fast is it really? And in order to do that, we're going to compare it to PC, and we're going to discuss the architecture behind the PlayStation 5. It's a lot different than you may have imagined, and we're going to touch base on multiple aspects of the PlayStation 5 because this just is not any average console. This is not just another PlayStation, so to speak. It's actually quite unique and quite diverse in how the internal, I guess you could say, gadgets and circuitry and proprietary stuff works. So let's dive right in and talk about PlayStation 5. And first, we're going to start out with the CPU. Now, the CPU inside the PlayStation 5 is a Zen 2 Gen 3 Ryzen from AMD. In fact, it's relatively identical to the 3700X. If you're wondering what that is, it is an 8-core, 16-thread, 3.6 gigahertz processor. Except the Ryzen processors are no, bare essential or basic CPU. They're very, very good for gaming. In fact, the 3700X is the old processor, and the one that replaces it is the 5800X, which is currently one of the best processors for gaming, only falling behind the 5900X and the 5950. In some cases, the 5800 is actually faster than the 5950 or the 5900. So realistically speaking, since it's the one generation behind, obviously it's not as fast as the 5800, but a lot of gamers are using the 3700X right now. Now, this Zen 2 3700X that's inside the PS5 also has Smart Shift. And we're going to talk about Smart Shift in just a few seconds. Before we do that, we have to talk about the video card. Now, considering it's a Foxconn board and has pretty much all AMD stuff, AMD CPU and GPU with Smart Shift technology, we're going to talk about the GPU and what is really inside. Well, with the fact that it can produce 10.3 teraflops, it's very powerful for a console. Now, it has 36 CUs variable at 2.23 gigahertz. Now, what I'm talking about here, the compute units being at a variable 2.23, that's quite quick how they have this set up. So let's dive into exactly what the equivalent would be. Well, the equivalent of the PS5 video card would be faster than a 5700 AMD card, but not quite as fast as a 5700 XT, depending on how you look at it. In fact, though, if you really dive in, the video card inside the PlayStation is actually more or less the same speed as a 2070 Super from NVIDIA or a 2080 RTX. Not quite as fast as the Ti on specs or on paper, but in a lot of games it actually fares better in frame rates than even the 2080 Ti. With the fact that it has 16 gigs of GDR6, it has a lot of video memory, and it has more video memory than, of course, a lot of the video cards out there. And the fact that it has Smart Shift technology is really going to improve the system performance. And what that basically means is you have a certain thermal load on a video card and a CPU. You can't exceed that thermal load. If the GPU needs more power and there was no Smart Shift and the CPU and GPU kind of were getting close to that ceiling, they'd have to dial back the clock speed on both, which would kill video performance because the GPU has to slow down. With the fact that it has Smart Shift technology, what this allows the PlayStation 5 to do is, in fact, shift power where it's needed. So if the GPU needs extra power and we're beginning to bottleneck power and hit thermal limit, the CPU can hand off extra power for extra performance to the GPU and vice versa. And the fact that you can only clock something so fast based on thermal limits and your cooling abilities, and even though the PlayStation 5 is much larger and more efficient in cooling per se, arguably, than the Xbox Series X and other consoles, it's not as big as a PC, so you can't clock these processors at 4 or 4.5 or even 5 gigahertz, as the heat they would dissipate would be too much, or the heat they would create would be too much to dissipate from the case. Which is why the 3700X processor is at 3.6 gigahertz, yet the PlayStation is clocked down a little bit at 3.5 to save voltage and heat, and to basically keep it below its thermal limits, which is where the whole smart shift technology really comes into play here. Now, the fact that this console is able to even compete at this level for this price is mind-blowing, considering Sony is able to cap a large amount of benefit for AMD and revenue and sell so many guaranteed units. They can cop these units real cheap. In fact, they're probably getting this architecture way less than we think they are. I can't even guess what they're getting it for, but they're not really losing too much, if any at all, on the $500 sale. So that tells you how cheap they really are getting it, considering to build a gaming computer to be on par with PS5. I've already tried this, and I'm going to show you guys proof of this in a minute. In order to build a gaming PC that's on par with PS5, just barely equal to, is well into $800 to $1,000, not even really taking into account a good gaming case. So you could easily be between $800 and $1,200 to just get the bare results of a PS5. And even then, PS5 is going to be more fluid, smooth, and have a better hard drive, because the M.2s are nowhere near as fast as the SSD in the PlayStation. It has 5.5 gigabytes per second write speed. We really want to know what that means. It's literally twice the speed of the hard drive I have in my computer, and I have one of the fastest drives you can get. In fact, I think the fastest drive you can get is only 60% of the speed of what's in the PS5. In fact, this has been confirmed by multiple people who have done reviews on the console here, and they've torn it apart. So essentially, the PlayStation 5 is a bargain and a half times 10 when you consider what it can do for its price. It's just unbelievable. 10.3 teraflops for $500 is unprecedented. Like I said, a 2080 Ti is a little bit faster at times than the PS5. The graphics card itself is $1,500. I don't even know what a 2080 Super goes for these days, but I'm pretty sure the 2070 Super, excuse me. I think that I don't even know what it goes for, but if I was to guess, they're probably still in the $500 to $800 range. Even if you found one for $500, that's the cost of the PlayStation in its own right, considering the 3700X is still over $300. Now, there are games that the PlayStation 5 plays just as smooth, if not smoother, with better frame rates than even the 2080 Ti does, which is saying a lot considering what the 2080 Ti is. The technology inside the PS5 is unprecedented for its time, and the simple fact of the matter is the PS5 is pretty much on par with a mid to top end PC from only a year ago. And considering consoles usually outlive the hardware in PCs, it's quite honestly easy to see how PS5 is going to be extremely relevant still in 2 to 3 years from now based on the hardware it has. It's doing very well, and there's some critics that don't really like the fact that they didn't go with something a little newer and a little faster, but when you really think about it, it's on par with PCs about 2 years ago. In fact, I built a PC in 2017, only 3 years ago. By the time I sold it was barely 3 years ago, and it was running two 980 GTX Ti's. It couldn't even play games 4K 60p. And that PC cost me $2,000 to build only 3 years ago. PS5 is $500, and it's getting better results than that PC did only a couple years ago. It is insane to think about. I'm going to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about, though. I'm going to show you right here. I'm just going to switch the screen over so you guys can see what I'm saying, because you won't believe it till you see it. Let me see here. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this. I'm going to show you. This is the CPU basically that's inside the PlayStation 5, give or take. I mean, it's not 100% down to every last piece identical, but it's extremely similar. It's almost minus the boost frequency and the core frequency. This is basically what the PS5 has inside. You can see we're already at the cost of a PS5 damn near just with the CPU. The graphics card that is inside the PS5 is in between a 5700 and 5700 XT. You can see we're at a $600, $500, $600 graphics card. We're already well into the $900 range. We have no power supply, memory, motherboard, or case. Like I said, it's extremely hard to build a computer that's equal to a PS5 for under $1,000. Can somebody do it? Possibly. Going to be very hard. A bunch of used stuff is going to be in that case. Going to be a pretty crummy case and a very bottom of the barrel motherboard because, like I said, you're going to be looking at $700, $800 just for the CPU and the GPU. You know, and like I said here, you look at the equivalent. The PS5 is equivalent of a 2080 Super, you know, or 2070 Super. Maybe not quite a Ti, but very close. And in some games, it even outperforms the Ti, and it's out there. I don't want to dive too far just into that in its own right, but I really wanted to touch base on the facts of this, you know, just from an overall standpoint without digging into every single game and every single frame rate. I just wanted to explain to you guys exactly what's going on here, what we're looking at, and how fast the PS5 truly is. Like I said, the SSD is touted right now as being the fastest SSD in the world. PC doesn't even have access to this SSD. The fact that it's continuity between the console's entire hardware setup, it just works with a very beautiful flow and seamlessly with all the technology that's in the PS5 because, believe it or not, Sony has full control over the firmware, software, and the hardware in the PS5, unlike PC. Some manufacturers have firmware control, some have software control, some third-party, their manufacturing process. Sony pretty much has full control of everything in and out of their console, which is why the continuity throughout the entire system and the stability is so good, because they control everything, which is why it works so seamlessly. It's unbelievable to sit here and think about the tech that's in a PS5. And like I said, I'm not fanboying over the PS5. Anybody who knows, I've got my Ryzen machine right behind me. I play most of my games now on the PC, but it is really safe to say that the PlayStation 5 is probably the best console ever conceived at this point. I mean, notwithstanding the Xbox Series X, which we're not discussing in this video. We're purely talking about the Sony PlayStation 5 and how it fares against the PC. So to pretty much end this video, PC versus PS5. Which is faster? Well, for the money, PS5 is faster. You're not going to build a PC for $500, and you're going to find it very hard to build one for even $800 or $1,000 that can compete with PS5. Once you start getting around the $1,200 to $1,300, $1,400 range, you'll surpass the PS5. But even then, will it be worth it? Because I have a $2,900 or $3,000 setup behind me, not including the markups I paid to build certain parts of that computer. And even I am barely outperforming a PS5 on certain games. Yes, I can get 240 frames a second in Warzone, but in 4K, it's about 100. PlayStation 5 plays Warzone in 4K at 60 to 70 frames a second. They've capped it at 60, but it actually gets more like 70 or 80. So I paid 8 times more money for a PC to get 20 frames a second. When PlayStation's already doing between 60 and 70, sometimes 80, depending on the scenes. It doesn't drop frames hardly, if ever. And I played it for over a month before I built my PC. So realistically, is the PlayStation 5 faster than a top-end PC? No, it's not. But a top-end PC is going to run you $3 grand, $2,500, $3 grand, $3,500, depending on what you get. So it really comes down to your budget. You're not going to find much in the $1,500 or less area that's going to be a lot faster than PlayStation 5. I would say PS5 is on board between $800 and $1,500 is where your PCs are going to be that are going to be neck and neck with PS5. The question is, when you spend more, are you really getting more? PlayStation 5 plays games at 120 hertz in 1080, and it plays 60 hertz, 60p or higher in 4K. So is it really worth spending all that money if you're going to just, you know, go from 120 to 240, or if you're going to go in 4K from 60 to 90? That's what you have to ask yourself. It's not necessarily better than a PC, but it's pretty good, and it's equal to most PCs, if not all of them, at, you know, 1,500 or less, and pretty much 1,000 or less. You're not going to find anything relatively close to that to be able to just beat or stomp Sony down in this situation. So in the question, PS5 versus PC, PS5 is definitely the better bargain, the better value, and it's going to perform equal to or better than most PCs up to a certain amount of money. And it's going to have longevity here, 3 to 5 years minimum, probably 5 or 7 years. Who knows at this point, because we may get a PS5 Pro real soon. So PS5 is just incredibly good. And I guess to a degree, to answer the title of the video, PS5 actually is better than PC in a lot of ways. Value for dollar, you know, the overall cost, ease of use without having to worry about components being swapped out in buildings. So it's kind of a yes and no, and we'll leave it at that. It's pretty close to call, but overall, I'd say it's a win-win. For the most part, if we're not including PCs over, say, $1,300, the PS5 is better and faster for value in a lot of different ways. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that you guys found it, you know, fun and exciting to learn more about PS5. I've been wanting to do this video for several weeks and just have not had a chance to do so. Live streams will return tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Be there, guys. Thank you so much for stopping in. I really appreciate it. You guys rock. And if you want to see a specific video on the channel, comment below and let me know. As I would not be here if it wasn't for you guys. So thank you so much. Take care of yourselves in these strange times, and I appreciate you stopping in. Peace.